sentencing for Brittney Griner. She's been sentenced to 9 years in prison, and she has been fined 1 million rubles, which is around $16,000 or $17,000. So Brittney Griner, again, sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison for these narcotics charges. Now, this is just 6 months less than what the prosecution was asking for. We have to remember that her lawyers had, for the entirety of the case, had appealed for leniency from this judge, trying to create a picture of an American athlete who was exhausted after a long flight, who had just recovered from COVID, who lived in a place where having a small quantity of this cannabis oil, which was prescribed to her from a doctor, it was a mistake, and that she packed it in haste, and it seems that has fallen on deaf ears in this court. Again, Brittney Griner sentenced to 9 years in prison and is going to be facing a fine of up to 1 million rubles, which again is around $16,000 or $17,000. And it really just underscores what we've been saying about this case, and more importantly about Russia's legal system when it comes to these crimes and when it comes to its court system generally. It usually doesn't bode very well for those who are caught up and who are accused of committing crimes, particularly drug crimes. And now we have this sentencing. But as far as the conditions go, we have heard from Brittney Griner in the past, in which she said that she was being cared for, and I think, again, being very careful in how she described the conditions in which she was or she's been imprisoned in. But we don't have a huge amount of information about the kind of food she's receiving or the cell that she sleeps in at night. What we do know is that she typically wears her own clothing, that when she enters the court, she often has photographs with her. She will have photographs of her family, of her loved ones, of her wife. And today she walked in with a photograph of her Russian team, a team she's been playing with for 7 years, a team which she says she loves and her teammates that she cares about, and a team that she apologized for because of this entire situation. And yet this image that she tried to project as somebody who cared about Russia, cared about her time in Russia, the years she spent in Russia, and perhaps more specifically that the seriousness in which she took Russian laws, saying that she knew she broke the law and that she understood she did, and that is why she admitted her guilt in this case. Well, it would seem that wasn't enough for this judge. And as we've been saying, Brittney Griner now sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison.
9 years. And one of the things that the defense for Griner said was that she had won the sympathy of her guards, her fellow prison inmates who supported her, according to the AP, by shouting, "Brittney, everything will be okay." But we know now that she has been sentenced to 9 years and a fine of roughly $16,000 US. Imtiaz, do you know anything more about an appeals process or what the next steps might be through the Russian judicial system?
It's very early days, and it's hard to say. I'd imagine that there would be some sort of appeals process, but I think more than anything, what Brittney Griner's family, what the NBA and her supporters will no doubt be putting even more pressure on the Biden administration, on the White House, on the State Department to do something to get her home. As we've been saying, prisoner swaps, while uncommon, are not unheard of. We understand that in the past, Americans caught up in Russia, given sentences which may seem disproportionate to the crime, have been swapped in the past, and that the hope is that this will happen for Brittney Griner. The difference now is that the tensions between Moscow and Washington, which of course, as we know, has historically been tense for decades and decades, but in this specific moment in which we've now had over 5 months since Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, in which we know the first time that the Secretary of State spoke to his counterpart was specifically about Brittney Griner, a conversation between these two diplomats, which frankly did not happen since the start of that invasion, which really gives you a sense of just how frosty ties have become. But none of that has resulted in some sort of an agreement which will see Brittney Griner sent home. As we've been saying, the U.S. has offered to swap Brittney Griner and a man by the name of Paul Whelan, another American who's being held in a Russian prison, that the two of them be swapped with a